So talking to kids about drugs and alcohol, the most important thing to remember is to talk to kids about drugs and alcohol. That is the most important thing, that we talk to our kids about drugs and alcohol. Research shows that kids who've talked to their parents about substance use are less likely to get in serious trouble, and they're more likely to make safer choices. So talking to your kids about what your expectations are, what your rules are, what the consequences might be is critical. It's a hard conversation to have, so acknowledge that. Let them know that it's important to you and you want to have the conversation. So when you decide to have the conversation with your kids, hopefully it's kind of an ongoing conversation that you've been having with them since they were little about their bodies and their health and safety and taking care of themselves. And so there's kind of an age-appropriate level to talk about this as they get older. Once they get to about 12, it's important to start talking about specific substances like alcohol or marijuana or nicotine, and letting them know what you expect, letting them know why you expect that is important. So before you have the conversation, you might want to do a little research. There's some really good books out there. You could talk to friends who have older kids who've maybe gone a little farther down the road and get clear about what your boundaries are, what you're comfortable with, and what you want to tell your kids and why. And then give them a heads up. So don't just spring it on them. Say, hey, I want to talk to you about drugs and alcohol. Is now a good time? Or I'd like to talk to you about it tomorrow. It's really important. And then when you sit down with them, just be really clear and don't say too much. Don't go on too long, but tell them what your expectations are. Tell them what the consequences might be. And some of the whys could be, it's illegal. There could be legal consequences. We know that brains between 13 and 25 years old are much more impacted by drugs and alcohol than adult brains. So to just give their brains a break for that time is really going to be good for their long-term health. It can put them in risky situations, whether it's driving with someone who's impaired or an unwanted sexual interaction. Those are the risky things that might happen. They could lose things that are really important to them, like sports or relationships, other activities that might be in jeopardy if they use drugs or alcohol. And also because let them know that you love them, that you really care about them. And that's why it's important to you that they respect your boundaries. And your boundaries might be different than some other families. There's this idea of talking to your kids about conditional amnesty. So if your kid is in an unsafe situation, they have had some alcohol and they can't drive home, or a friend has used drugs and can't safely drive, let them know they can call you and you won't talk about it that night, and maybe the traditional consequences won't apply, but you will talk about it the next day. You could have a plan with your kid that they could text you something. If they're in a situation and they need an out, you could text them an X and they could say, oh, hey, you know, my parents need to come pick me up. There's some family emergency. So work with your kid on helping them troubleshoot difficult situations. And lastly, listen to your kid. Leave space for them to have questions. What are their concerns? Do they understand what you're talking about? And know that it'll be an ongoing conversation. But most importantly, have the conversation.